Hello everyone and welcome to the new session of the biology lecture series, and today we'll be discussing the NCERT Exemplar questions for the topic evolution. So today we'll be solving the multiple choice questions, and I would like to mention that all the questions in this lecture are completely NCERT based. So the questions, the NCERT Exemplar question, they have been divided into 4 categories. First one is the multiple choice question. Second are the very short answer type questions. Third category is the short answer type question. And fourth category is the long answer type questions. So in this lecture, we'll be discussing the multiple choice question. Let's talk about question number 1. Now, which of the following is used as an atmospheric pollution indicator? Alright, so let's have a look at the options. Option number 1, Lepidoptera. Option number 2, lichens. Option number C is Lycopersicon. Option number D is Lycopodium. Okay, so in the footer here, you can see I've highlighted the topic or the concept on which this question is based. Okay, and these are all the topics that are covered in this lecture or in this chapter. Okay. Now let's have a look at the answer. So option number B is the correct answer here. Let's see why option number B is correct. So lichens, as you know, lichens, they are made up of 2 partners. First one is the fungi and second one is the algae. Okay. So lichens, they are made up of mycobiont. So myco represents the fungi and they are made up of phycobiont. So phyco is related to algae. Okay. Now lichens can be used as the atmospheric pollution indicator. Okay. Why? Because they do not grow well in polluted areas. Okay. Why? Because they are very sensitive. Especially the phycobiont means the algal partner that is very sensitive. And because of that, what happens? When the pollution level increases, okay, such as if oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, they increase in the atmosphere, in the environment, then this phycobiont is not able to grow well. It is not able to photosynthesize. If it is not able to photosynthesize, then it won't be able to produce the food. And the mycobiont is dependent on the food that is synthesized by the phycobiont. Okay. So here there is a symbiotic relationship between the mycobiont and the phycobiont, and together they comprise the lichens. Okay, so in contaminated air, the phycobiont, especially phycobiont, is not able to grow. They are very sensitive and they are unable to synthesize the organic food. Now, this is the reason why lichens are used as atmospheric pollution indicator. Okay. Now, in the options, we had this Lepidoptera. So why Lepidoptera is not the correct answer? Because it is an insect order and not used as an atmospheric pollution indicator. Then Lycopersicon. Lycopersicon is a scientific name for tomato. So again, this is not used as a atmospheric pollution indicator. And Lycopodium, this is a pteridophyte. So pteridophytes, you know, these are vascular plants. Okay. And these are also not used as the atmospheric pollution indicator. Okay. Now, let's talk about the next question. The theory of spontaneous generation stated that, okay, first option is life arose from living forms only. Option B, life can arise from both living and non-living. Option number C, life can arise from non-living things only. And option number D, life arises spontaneously, neither from living nor from non-living. Okay, these are the options. The theory of spontaneous generation, if you know, is also known as abiogenesis theory. So this theory was given by Oparin and Haldane. So according to this theory, or what does this theory state that? This theory states that the life exists or life is generated from non-living things. All right. So here the correct answer is option number C. Now let's have a look at the explanation why option number C is correct. So the theory of spontaneous generation stated that life can arise from non-living things only, and it is also known as abiogenesis theory. For example, exposed meat. Okay, if you expose the meat in the open air, then you can see flies and maggots, they feed on this meat. All right. So you can see if the meat is exposed in the open air, then there are flies and maggots around it. But what did the scientists thought? They thought that the life, means the biological life, flies and the maggots, which are living, they generate from non-living things. So non-living things here is meat. Okay, so it was concluded that the living things, flies and maggots, they arise from non-living thing, which is meat here. So later, Louis Pasteur, by careful experimentation, he disproved this theory and demonstrated that life arose from living forms, means pre-existing life. And Pasteur demonstrated that in flasks exposed to air, new living organism emerged in heat-killed yeast culture. Okay, so if the yeast culture was heat-killed, mean it is sterilized. There is no microorganism growing here. But what he demonstrated, that when a flask, it was exposed to the air and that flask was containing heat-killed yeast culture, then in this condition, there was new living organisms. In this condition, new living organism emerged. Okay. Now, next question. Let's talk about the next question. Animal husbandry and plant breeding programs are the examples of. So let's have a look at the first option. Reverse evolution, artificial selection, mutation, or natural selection. All right. So animal husbandry and plant breeding experiment, they are man-made programs. And why they are done? If you talk about animal husbandry, here the animals are produced that are superior. So we select the desired traits, okay, and then we select this trait and we produce a superior animal. Similarly, in case of plant breeding experiment, we select the desired gene, we select the desired characters, and we propagate the plants, and then we get the desired plant at the end. Okay. So now these are the examples of artificial selection, both animal husbandry and plant breeding experiments. So what happened in artificial selection? It is a process in which the breeder chooses to perpetuate only those forms that have certain desirable inheritable characteristics. Okay, so they select certain characteristic, okay, and then they perpetuate only those forms that have certain desirable inheritable characteristic. Now, the other three options are incorrect, as the mutation, they are the sudden change in the DNA sequences due to mutagenic agents such as chemicals and radiations. So, you know, UV radiations, okay, and some chemicals, they can cause mutation, and mutations are always sudden. Okay, they are fast, they are sudden change in the DNA sequence, and they are heritable also. So mutation is not the answer here. Natural selection, if we talk about natural selection is a gradual process by which biological traits become either more or less common in a population as a function of the effect of the changing environment. So simply you can say that what happens in natural selection, when the species or the organisms or the group of organisms, all right, when they are able to adapt to a particular environment, then those organisms will be favored because they are able to adapt to the changing environment. All right. So if they can adapt, they will survive, their number will increase, and they will form a different species. Okay. So this is natural selection. Now, what is reverse evolution? Reverse evolution is also known as de-evolution or backward evolution. Okay, it is known as de-evolution or backward evolution. Now, it is a notion that species can change into more primitive forms over time. Okay, so during evolution, what happens? Complex organisms are formed. Okay, from simple to complex organisms are formed. But what is happening in reverse evolution? The complex organism is reverting back to primitive forms over time. This is known as reverse evolution. So this is also not the correct answer here. Now let's talk about the next question. Paleontological evidences of evolution refer to. So paleontology. Paleontology means study of the fossils. Okay. So these are the options. Development of the embryo, homologous organs. Third option is fossils and fourth option is analogous organs. The correct answer is option number C here. Okay. So let's see the explanation. Paleontological evidences for evolution refers to the evidences from fossils. Now, what are fossils? Fossils are preserved remains or traces of organism from the distant past. Okay. The study of the fossils is known as paleontology. And the other options are not correct. Why? Because the developmental pattern of embryo refers to embryological evidences of evolution. Okay. So the first point was about the embryo. Okay. But the development of embryo is known as embryogenesis. Okay. And the development pattern of embryo, it refers to the embryological evidences. But here we are considered and we are talking about the fossils. So paleontological evidence is the correct answer. And the other options were homologous and analogous organs. What are homologous organs? They are formed because of the divergent evolution. Okay, or you can say adaptive radiations. And homologous organs are those organs which have similar structure but different function. Okay, they have different function but same structure. Whereas analogous organs, these organs have functional similarity, means they have same function. Okay, this is clear. So homologous and analogous organs, they provide evidences for comparative anatomy and morphology. Now next question is, the bones of forelimbs of whale, bat, cheetah and man, they are similar in structure. Now why they are similar in structure? So one organism has given rise to another. This is the first option. Second option, they share a common ancestor. Option number C is they perform the same function. And option number D is they have biochemical similarities. Okay. Now next question is, so the answer is option number B. So let's see the explanation. Now the bones of forelimbs of whale, bat, cheetah and man, they are similar in structure because they have a common ancestor. Okay. So here we can say these are homologous organs, means they have similar structure or same structure but functions are different. You can see the functions of forelimbs of the whale, bat, cheetah and man, they are different but they have the common ancestor. So this is an example of divergent evolution also. Alright. So these are the homologous organs which have different function across diverse forms but are developed along the same pattern. And these organs, they arise due to divergent evolution. Okay. So how you can explain? So divergent evolution, here we have the common ancestor and it diverged into two species. So suppose this is species number 1, this is species number 2 and this is the common ancestor. This is the common ancestor. So this formation of different species, this can arise due to geographical barriers. Okay. So this is known as divergent evolution. You have the common ancestor and you can see there is a change in the environment, there is a change in the geography. Alright. So there are geographical barriers. Okay. So both of these species, they were present in different environment, so they adapted to their environment and formed different species. Now, next question is related to analogous organ. So, analogous organs arise due to, so homologous organ arise due to divergent evolution. So, analogous organs arise due to convergent evolution. Okay, so here are the options. Option number 1, divergent evolution. Option number B is artificial selection. Option number C is genetic drift. And option number D is convergent evolution. So we have already talked about divergent evolution, and we also have talked about artificial selection. What is genetic drift? Genetic drift is the change in the frequency of allele or the gene by random chance. Okay, or you can say random change in the allele or the gene frequency. This is known as genetic drift. Okay, this is clear. Convergent evolution is the answer here. So option number D is correct here. So the analogous organs, they arise due to convergent evolution. Okay, so these organs, okay, have similar functions but are different in their structure. For example, wings of the insect and the bird. So you can see the wings of the insect and the bird, they have the similar function of flying, but the structure is different. Okay, so these organs arise due to, or analogous organs arise due to convergent evolution. Means initially there were two unrelated species and they converged into a single species or similar species. So these two were unrelated. Okay, so they must be growing in similar kind of environment. So they have converged into a species that is related, that have similar features. Okay, this is known as convergent evolution. Now the other options, they are incorrect. Why? Because divergent evolution, they give rise to homologous organs. This already we have seen. Genetic drift can contribute to speciation. And okay, how genetic drift can contribute to speciation? So you must be knowing about the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So it says, in the absence of the evolutionary forces, the allele or the genetic gene frequency remains the same. But if any of the evolutionary force, such as genetic drift, is acting, if there is genetic drift, which means the random change in the allele or the gene frequency, if genetic drift is happening, then what will happen? Gene and the allele frequency will change in the population, which will lead to the formation of new species, which is known as speciation. And artificial selection, it is used to produce improved varieties of animals and plants. This also we have discussed. So because of these three options are incorrect. Now next question is based on the Hardy-Weinberg principle. Okay, so this is the equation for Hardy-Weinberg. You already know P plus Q square is equal to P square plus 2PQ plus Q square is always equal to 1. So this is the Hardy-Weinberg equation, you can say. Okay, so this P square represents the homozygous dominant individual, 2PQ is the heterozygous individuals, and Q square is the homozygous recessive. Alright, this is clear. Now the options are, this equation represents an equation and it is used in, what is the application of this equation? First is population genetics, then we have Mendelian genetics, third is biometrics, and fourth is molecular genetics. Okay, now let's have a look at the answer. Option number A is correct, means population genetics. So this equation is used in population genetics. Okay, this I have already told you. P square, this represents the homozygous dominant. Okay, whereas 2PQ, this represents heterozygotes. Okay, heterozygous. And Q square, this is the homozygous recessive individuals. Okay, this is clear. Now, it is a mathematical representation of Hardy-Weinberg principle. This principle says that the allele frequencies in a population are stable and is constant from generation to generation in the absence of any evolutionary forces. That is, the gene pool remains the constant. So in the absence of the evolutionary forces such as gene migration, gene flow, genetic drift, okay, and other factors like mutation, natural selection, okay, so in the absence of these, even sexual reproduction, if there is no sexual reproduction, then also the allele frequency can change. So in the absence of, you can say, evolutionary forces that I have mentioned, the allele frequencies in a population, they remain the same, they remain stable from one generation to another generation. This is known as Hardy-Weinberg principle. The next question is, appearance of antibiotic resistance bacteria is an example of. Option A is adaptive radiation. Option B is transduction. Option number C is pre-existing variation in the population. And option number D is divergent evolution. Okay. Now, option number C is correct. Let's see the explanation now. Now, what happens? Appearance of the antibiotic resistant bacteria is an example of pre-existing variations. So what happens? These variations arise due to mutations. So already there are some pre-existing variations in the population which have arisen due to mutation. So suppose a mutation has occurred and it gave antibiotic resistance to the bacteria. So if antibiotic is added to the medium where the bacteria is growing, then what will happen? Now, those bacteria in which there was pre-existing variation due to the mutation, and because of that, it become antibiotic resistant. So those bacteria will grow. They will increase in number, all right, and the rest of the bacteria will die. Okay, so what happens? When the bacterial population encounters a particular antibiotic, those sensitive will die. Okay, but the other bacteria having the mutations, because of this mutation, they become resistant to the antibiotic. So what will happen? Soon the resistant providing genes, means the antibiotic resistant providing gene, it will become widespread and the entire population will become resistant. Okay, so only those bacteria will survive that consist of the antibiotic resistant genes. Okay, this is clear, and this gene will increase in number as well as the organism also will increase in number. Now, one of the options was adaptive radiation. So this is incorrect. So it is not due to adaptive radiation, because adaptive radiation is the development of different functional structures from a common ancestral form, which is also known as the divergent evolution. Now, one of the options was transduction. So what is transduction? Transduction is the process whereby foreign DNA is introduced into another cell via a viral vector. Okay, this is clear. Now let's talk about the next question. Evolution of life shows that life forms had a trend of moving from, okay, so life we know originated in the water, and then later on terrestrial organisms evolved. So here in the question it is asking, evolution of the life shows that life form had a trend of moving from option number A, land to water, option number B, dry land to wetland, option number C, fresh water to sea water, and option number D is water to land. Okay, this is clear. Now let's have a look at the answer. So option number D is correct here. Okay, now let's see the explanation. Now the evolution of life shows that life forms had a trend of moving from water to the land. Okay, the early vertebrates, they were fishes. So fishes are aquatic, they live only in water. Okay, now some fishes, they gradually change into amphibians. What are amphibians? Amphibians, they can live in both land and water. And what happens? Certain amphibians, they then transformed into the reptiles. So reptiles are those organisms which can live on the land. Now some of the latter finally evolved into birds that can fly and mammals also. Okay, so birds, also fishes which lived in water, they were aquatic. They evolved into amphibians which can live in both land and water, and then amphibians, they transformed into what? They transformed into reptiles, and the reptiles later evolved into birds and then mammals. So thus this pattern shows that life form moved from water to land. Clear? Now next question, vivipary is considered to be more evolved. Why? So vivipary or the viviparous organisms are those organisms that give birth to young ones. Here young ones are born. Fertilization is usually internal. Okay. And what happens? The young ones, they develop inside the female's body. Okay. Inside the mother body. And what happens? The chance of survival is more because care is taken of the young one. Okay. But whereas in oviparous organisms, which the organism which lay eggs, there are a lot of predators which eat those eggs. Okay, so the chance of survival is very less. So in vivipary, the chance of survival is more as the development is inside the female body and care is taken of the young ones from the predators. So let's have a look at the options. Option number A, the young ones are left on their own. Option number B, the young ones are protected by thick shells. Option number C, the young ones are protected inside the mother's body and are looked after they are born, leading to more chances of survival. Option number D, the embryo takes long time to develop. So option number C is correct here. Let's see how. Now viviparity is considered to be more evolved because the young ones are protected inside the mother's body and they are looked after once they are born. So because of this, there are more chances of survival. An example of viviparous organisms are mammals. Whereas what happens in oviparity, the female lays fertilized or the unfertilized egg covered by hard calcareous shell. So these eggs are covered by hard calcareous shell and these eggs are laid in the safe place because there are a lot of predators. So to protect the eggs from the predators, they are laid in the safe place, but still the chances of survival are very less. Why? Because the young ones are left on their own. And there are a lot of predators also which eat these eggs. So that's why chances of survival are very less. That's why viviparity is considered to be more evolved. The next question is, fossils are generally found in, okay, let's have a look at the options. Sedimentary rocks, igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks, and then any type of rock. Okay, what should be the answer? Option number A, sedimentary rocks is the correct answer. Now let's look at the explanation. Now fossils, they are generally found in sedimentary rocks, which are formed by the gradual deposition of silt, sand, or calcium carbonate. And they are formed over millions of years in regions such as lakes or sea. Now during the formation of sedimentary rocks, the dead animals are carried to the sea or the large lake. Then they sink down. Okay, and they get buried in the rocks. So the animals thus preserved in the rocks are converted later into fossils. So you can say fossils, they are found in the sedimentary rocks. Now coming to the next question. Now for the Mn blood group system, the frequencies of M and N of the alleles are given 0.7 and 0.3 respectively. Now the expected frequency of Mn blood group bearing organism is likely to be, you have to calculate it, the expected frequency of Mn blood group. Options are 42, 49, 9 and 58. Now correct answer is option number A. Let's see how option number A is correct. So this question again is based on, okay, this equation, Hardy-Weinberg equation. So the expected frequency of Mn blood group being organism is likely to be 42. Let's see how it is 42. So according to Hardy-Weinberg equation, okay, p square plus 2pq plus q square is always equal to 1. Okay, so here you can see frequency of M alleles. P is the frequency of the M alleles, and what is PQ? It is the frequency of homozygous dominant individuals. Q is the frequency of N alleles. Q square is the frequency of homozygous recessive individual, and 2pq is the frequency of heterozygous individuals. Okay, now we can put in the values. Okay, p square, q square, 2pq is always equal to 1. So if we solve this, we will get the frequency of the heterozygous. So 2pq is the frequency of the heterozygous. Okay, this is the frequency of the heterozygous individual, which is 42%. This is clear? The next question. Which type of selection is industrial melanism observed in the moth bison betullaria? Okay, so bison betullaria is known as the pepper moth. So you know what happened during the industrialization? The atmosphere was polluted. Okay, there was a lot of carbon deposition. So initially this pepper moth was light in color, okay, or you can say white in color. Then what happens as the carbon content increased in the environment, this carbon, it got settled on the trees. So this light colored variety was quite visible and it was eaten up by the predators. Whereas the dark colored moth, it survived because it was able to camouflage against the dark colored environment. So here, what type of selection is, okay, is industrial melanism observed in moth? You know, natural selection or the selection are of so many types. The first one is stabilizing, second directional, third is disruptive, okay, and fourth they are talking about the artificial selection, which we have already discussed. All right. So what happens in stabilizing? The intermediate phenotype is selected. So this for the original population here, this intermediate, this is selected. This is known as stabilizing. What happens in directional? The selection is in one direction. Suppose this is the initial population. Here there is in this direction. One of the phenotype is selected. Here selection is in one direction. Okay, so this is directional. Then disruptive. In disruptive, what happens? The extreme phenotypes are selected. So if this is the initial population, okay, the extremes are favored. These are the extremes here. So these phenotypes are favored here. Artificial selection, you already know. So option number B is the correct answer here. The pepper moth evolution serves as the case of directional color change. Okay, or you can say directional selection within the moth population due to air pollution stemming from the Industrial Revolution. Clear? Now, the other options are incorrect. Why? Because in stabilizing selection, I've already told you, average size individuals are favored or the intermediate phenotype is favored. For example, weight of newborn babies. And in the disruptive selection, both extremes are favored. Okay, so extreme phenotypes are favored while intermediate varieties are eliminated. Example is black-bellied seed cracker, which is known as Pyrenestis austrinus. Clear? Now, what happens in artificial selection? The individuals with desirable characteristics are deliberately selected to produce a progeny with all those characteristics. So, answer to this question was directional selection. Here in one direction means one phenotype, the black pepper moth, it got selected. Okay. Now, next question is the most accepted line of descent in human evolution is, let's have a look at the option. Australopithecus, Ramapithecus, Homo sapiens and Homo habilis. Next option is Homo erectus. Then we have Homo habilis. Then Homo sapiens, which is the most evolved human. Then option number D, Australopithecus, Ramapithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo sapiens, and option number C is Ramapithecus, Homo habilis, and Homo sapiens. So what is the answer here? Option number C is the correct answer here. Let's see. The most accepted line of descent in human evolution is Ramapithecus, Homo habilis. Okay, you can underline this. Then we have Homo erectus, and then finally Homo sapiens. So let's study about each of these. So Ramapithecus, they survived about 14 to 15 million years ago, and they walked erect on their hind legs, and they arise from Dryopithecus. All right. So first individuals was this Dryopithecus, and then from Dryopithecus, Ramapithecus evolved. Now Australopithecus, they lived from 4 to 2 million years ago in caves, and they had omnivorous diet, means they were eating both meat and the plant-based product, and they were fully bipedal hominid. Now Homo habilis. So Homo habilis, these were the first human-like being. They did not eat meat, and the brain capacity was 650 to 800 cc. Then let's talk about the Homo erectus. So they lived about 1.5 billion years ago, and the brain capacity was, you can see it has increased 900 cc, and they ate meat. Then the most evolved are the Homo sapiens. Here the brain capacity is 1450, and they have erect posture and limbs are straight. Okay, clear? Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following is an example of link species? Okay, let's have a look at the options. First option is lobefish. Second is dodo bird. Third option is seaweed. And fourth option is chimpanzee. So option number A, lobefish, is the correct answer here. So let's see. The lobefish is an example of link species. So about 350 million years ago, fish with stout and strong fins, they could move on land and go back to the water. Now, these were called lobed fin fish, and they evolved into the first amphibians. So this is known as the link species. It is linking the aquatic organism with the amphibians. So amphibians that lived on both land and the water, for example, coelacanth. So this coelacanth is an example of lobed fin fish. All right. So lobefish are the example of link species. Now in the option we had the dodo. So dodo is an extinct flightless bird. And the seaweed, they are multicellular benthic marine algae. And chimpanzees are the closest living relatives of humans. All right, this is correct. Now next question. Next question is we have to match the scientist, okay, under the column 1 with the ideas in the column 2. Okay, or you can say their contributions or their theories. So you can see here Darwin, Oparin, Lamarck, and Wagner. And here are the theories. Theory of abiogenesis, also known as theory of spontaneous evolution. Then we have the use and disuse of organs. Next is continental drift theory, and the fourth one is evolution by natural selection. So you already know Darwin, he talked about the natural selection. Oparin, he talked about the theory of abiogenesis. Lamarck, he talked about the use and disuse of the organs. And Wagner, he gave the continental drift theory. So these are the options. You have to select from these A, B, C, and D. So what is the correct answer here? Option number B is the correct answer. Okay. Let's have a look at the explanation. So Darwin is related with the evolution by natural selection. So natural selection, you already know, that species which is well adapted to the environment that will survive. Okay. Now, according to the theory, in the struggle for the existence, the individuals which have more favorable variation, it will survive and reproduce, while others which have less favorable or unfavorable variation will not perpetuate. Okay. Oparin and Haldane, they gave the abiogenesis theory, which says that life is originated from non-living things. So I've already given you the example. They said that the living organisms such as the flies and the maggots, they were generated or they evolved from what? Meat. Okay, so this is an example of abiogenesis theory. Now Lamarck, he said the use and disuse of organs is one of the important principle of Lamarckism. So he gave Lamarck. So Lamarck theory is known as Lamarckism, where he told about the use and disuse of the organ. So if you are using the organ, then it will be selected in the next generation. If you are not using it, then that organ will not be selected. Now Wagner, he proposed the continental drift theory. Now what is continental drift theory? So it states that part of the earth crust slowly drift atop a liquid core. Okay, so the earth crust is slowly drifting on the liquid core, okay, forming different continents. So this drifting, okay, of the earth crust on this liquid core is able to form the different continents. So because of this, different continents are formed because of this drifting on the liquid core. Now, as these continents had different environmental conditions, so plants and animals, they evolve. The next question is, in 1953, Miller, he created primitive earth conditions in the laboratory and they gave experiment evidence for origin of the first form of life from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. Now the primitive earth conditions created include, okay, let's see the options here. Low temperature volcanic storms and atmosphere rich in oxygen. Option number B, low temperature volcanic storms and reducing atmosphere. Option number C, high temperature volcanic storms and non-reducing atmosphere. Option number D, high temperature volcanic storm reducing atmosphere which contain methane and ammonia. So you already know the primitive atmosphere, okay, or the atmosphere which led to the origin of life. How was the atmosphere? The temperature was very high. There was a lot of volcanic eruptions there, okay, because of that temperature was very high and the atmosphere was lacking oxygen. It was not rich in oxygen. Instead of oxygen, some other gases were present such as methane and ammonia. So the atmosphere was very reducing. So option number D is the correct answer here. So Urey's experiment, in Urey's experiment, what did he tested for the occurrence of chemical evolution. So he gave the chemical evolution theory. Okay, so he stimulated the hypothetical condition present on the early earth. So he did a artificial setup, and in this artificial setup he mimicked, or you can say he stimulated hypothetical conditions which were present in the primitive earth or during the primitive earth. Now what happens? So these primitive earth conditions include high temperature, volcanic storms and reducing environment containing methane, ammonia, hydrogen and water. So you can see no oxygen was present at that time. Oxygen later evolved, or the concentration of oxygen increased after the photosynthesis started happening. Okay. Now, they ultimately found that large number of simple organic compounds, including some amino acids such as alanine, glycine and aspartic acid, they can be synthesized, okay, during the chemical origin of life. Okay, so this theory explains the chemical origin of life. Means in that reducing environment and in very high temperature conditions, okay, and in the presence of those gases, we can see the formation of large number of simple organic compounds such as amino acids. And this theory explains the chemical origin of life. Okay, clear? Now, next question is variation during mutation of meiotic recombinations are. So, you know, during meiosis, recombination happens, okay, and there are a lot of variations also. So, these variations can be due to the mutations. So, mutations, you already know, they are sudden, okay, and they are heritable and they are directionless, okay. Now, options are random and directionless. Option number B, random and directional. Option number C, random and small. And option number D is random, small and directional. Okay, so answer A is the correct answer here. Now, the variations during mutations of meiotic recombination are random and directionless. Okay, so mutations are always, you have to remember, they are random. Okay, they are sudden, they are heritable, and they are directionless. So Hugo de Vries, based on his work on evening primrose, he stated that it is mutation which cause sudden appearance of variation. So mutation is the cause of sudden appearance of variation that can result into speciation. Okay, clear? Now, he stated that mutations are sudden, heritable, and persistent in the successive generations. Okay, so mutations, they happen suddenly and they are heritable and they are persistent in the successive generation. And he contradicted the Darwinian variation. He contradicted Darwinian variation. So he said the Darwinian variations, they are small and they are directional. So Hugo de Vries said he doesn't believe in Darwinian theory and Darwinian variations. Okay, and he said that new species arise or new variations, they arise due to mutations which are very sudden, they are heritable, and they are persistent in the successive generation. Okay, so this was the end of this session. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll discuss the rest of the questions in the next lecture. Thank you very much for listening.